In 2010, filmmaking was not looked at as a profession. It was a hobby. I'm able to now produce films for people who were 16 years old when I met them in their first workshop, and now they are legitimate filmmakers. The crew, the story, the equipment, you put all those things into the pot, it's gonna taste good when it comes out. Not because of the quality of the footage, it's the intention of the footage. The more we can tell local stories by local voices, it's the most important job we have.
Hi, I am Moza, and this is the Ajyal Show podcast. Doha's film industry has grown rapidly over the years, but it wasn't always this way. Imagine arriving in a place with a young film scene and helping shape it into a thriving community. Our guest today has done just that. He's a filmmaker and artist whose journey began in Tribeca, New York, where he worked on projects with major networks like HBO, MTV, CNN, and so many more. In 2009, when the film industry was still in its early stages, he relocated to Qatar to work as a film mentor with the Doha Film Institute, inspiring a new generation of filmmakers. In December 2012, he co founded the Filmhouse, one of the most successful production studios in Qatar, bringing state of the art film production quality to Qatar's commercial sector, working with the biggest clients and supporting aspiring filmmakers. So let's start today's conversation with our guest, Justin Kramer. Very happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
How
It's a
have you been?
pleasure to be here. I've been great.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful to
I'm
hear.
excited to be here.
So let's start with the obvious. What brought you from Tribeca to Doha in 2009?
Well, exactly that, Tribeca Film Festival. So I was working for them for several years. Um, and a friend of mine, Manuel, and we were working for a festival in Nantucket, and we got a call asking if we would come out to Doha to help get a festival off the ground. And we agreed immediately. And actually, I had no idea where Qatar was at that time. And the next day they called and they said, send your passport copy. And I said, why would I need a passport? I thought we were going to like Ohio. And they were like, no, you're going to the Middle East. I was like, great, I'll get a passport. Let's do it. So yeah, I was really excited to come out here and help start something up. I thought I would only be here for a little while, and now it's 15 years later. I'm still here.
Before getting into the beginning of your career in Doha, what did you leave back in New York?
What did I leave? Well, I left everything that I thought I was going to do forever. I left a city that I was completely in love with. Um, you know, when you live in New York is the universe. Everything outside of it is sort of insignificant. I was working on so many projects with so many really interesting people, and networks and film projects and everything in between. And looking back on it now, I don't think I left anything behind that I regret leaving behind. I feel much better here. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Was your background academically, maybe university, in film too?
Yeah, I went to school for film and TV production, but I went to school very late. So I graduated high school in 2001, and I didn't go to university until I want to say it was 2004 or 5. I knew no one in New York as well. I had a relationship with someone who was moving to New York, and I said, I'd like to come as well. I have nothing to do. I don't know what to do, but I was always very interested in filmmaking. I had a camera. I used to shoot live music all the time as a way to get a free access to concerts. So I said, why don't I try filmmaking as a profession? And then one semester into university, I was shooting full time for people. So I was also like, why am I in university? I'm already working. So, but it was well worth it. Like, I think film school is where you make you make your first group of collaborators that you should, if they're, you know, the people that you blend well with, stay with them forever. So I started my first film production company there called Elwood Gentry with two of my friends, and we're still best friends today, although we live in different countries, but yeah.
What are some of the major or memorable projects you worked on back in New York, other than the concerts?
I would say, like, notable, I worked on Lady Gaga's first TV appearance.
Wow.
I worked on like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, hip hop honors. We shot some of the first ever performances by Pharrell with his old group NERD for MTV Trace, which was like the Spanish MTV. I think that the most important to me personally was I made a short film of the first chapter of a novel by a punk rock musician called Richard Hell. And it was for university, but it was something it was a book I really loved. And I found out he was doing a poetry reading on the Lower East Side. And I was like, I actually had work that night. I was supposed to shoot a red carpet with Tom Cruise for Mission Impossible. And I was like, I need to go to this poetry reading, which sounds insane. So I got a friend to shoot for me. I went there and I gave him a DVD copy of it, and I expected to never hear from him. I mean, he was like one of my idols. And the next day I got an email from him saying, I love this. We should get together. Let's make a project together. And then he was sort of like the mentor that I needed, someone that believed in me, someone that gave me a chance. So I would go to his house and we would film together, and we would do these weird short films, and then he introduced me to some of the most like influential people in the art world and in the film world, and I owe a lot to him that I stuck with filmmaking, I think. So I'd say that.
And coming from like such a robust beginning to your career, how would you say being in New York, working with all of those projects, how has that maybe shifted or shaped your approach to filmmaking in general?
Well,
Because not everyone starts in New York.
yeah, that's true. I mean, I think there's a professionality that you get right away, and like everyone in New York, you start from the very bottom. You know, I was getting coffee for people at first. When someone broke something on set, I was the one like cutting my hands up, trying to clean it up real quick in between takes. And then through the relationships that you make, and you learn from everybody you meet. And I think that was a great thing for me to sort of really go through those steps properly. And actually, I believed that I was going to be a DOP forever. And that's what I worked towards, and I became. And I couldn't imagine doing anything but shooting. That's what I loved. I'm a very visual person. And I think what actually happened was I got tired of carrying equipment. I think I was just so exhausted taking the subway with like bags of gear, and that I was like, you know, I think I should try to direct. I should give that a go. And that was something that I sort of fell into very naturally. And I think storytelling's something that you're kind of either, I don't know if you're necessarily born with it, but my father is an amazing storyteller. My grandfather's an amazing storyteller. And I feel like that came most natural to me. So New York is responsible for some of it, but I think work ethic that I was raised with, and that innate ability to tell a compelling story and make people laugh, or, you know, make people feel connected to you in some way is something I've been blessed with.
Now coming to Qatar, after finding out it's not in the US and it's in the Middle East, how was that like landing here, seeing what the country is like?
Okay, well, that's a day I'll never forget, to be honest. So
was it summer when you first arrived?
It was August. And I got on the plane in New York wearing like a flannel flannel shirt, so very like heavy clothes. And I remember the door of the plane opening, and feeling like someone just opened an oven and all that hot air just like rushed into my face. And I was like, I might have made a huge mistake. I don't know if I'm cut out for this kind of weather. And then the first place we went was city center. And we walked into Carrefour, and it was like another world to me. I had never seen a grocery store that had like a butcher in it. Like that was very strange to me. And like everything was very interesting and new. And I looked like an alien. I had like hair to here, like a pencil thin mustache, tattoos, and I was walking around like I was still in New York, but to everyone else, I was like something out of a sci-fi film. And I'll never forget the faces of people looking at me thinking like, what is this thing that's in our grocery store right now? So and then we made a huge mistake. One of the first days we worked, we were stationed in the Museum of Islamic Art. That's where our office was. And my friend Manuel and I, we missed the bus from the W Hotel. And then we looked at a map and we're like, we're from New York. Like, this is easy. We'll just walk. So we walked from the W to the MIA in August. And it was, I probably lost 15 pounds on the way. It was like unbelievably hot. And still we were like very excited to be on this journey. And I think, you know, the festival was brand new, and all the people that were involved had mostly come in for this project. And then I met the first couple Qatari people that I met, who I'll never forget, and I still love to this day, like Hamida Al-Kuwari, Muhammad Ali Ibrahim. I felt at home because we spoke the same sort of language. We were like kindred spirits, I guess you could say. Like I could have been best friends with them in New York. And I met my wife on the first day I was here.
Wow.
So that made me feel great. I mean, we didn't get married on the first day, obviously, but yeah, and I just sort of carved out a life here very quickly. And I love it. But yeah, it's totally different now than it was then.
What was the film scene like back then?
Non-existent. To my knowledge, there were maybe a few filmmakers here. I think Mahdi Ali and his brother were making films, and I think that there was obviously Al Jazeera were making films, but I don't think it wasn't really a profession for people. It was more like a hobby, and I can't say I remember seeing a film from here when we arrived. I think our goal was to start that. Well, that was more like 2010, but 2009 we made some 1-minute films, I believe, with some local filmmakers. I'm not sure any of them are still making films, but it was very interesting because coming from New York, where everything is filmed, like you can't turn a corner without seeing a set or a movie star or, you know, the Ghostbusters house or something, you know, and then landing here and realizing that the cinema culture was Hollywood blockbusters. Like my wife told me that the first film she ever saw in the cinema was Titanic. And then, you know, there were very few films here in general. I remember the first time I went to the cinema here, they had a Jean-Claude Van Damme film playing that was like a straight to VHS movie in the US. So I was like, what is happening? Like, how could this be? Because I thought cinema reached every part of the world at that point. But I think that, to me, was the most exciting thing about being here, was that we had a chance to sort of motivate and influence what would happen in the coming years. And I think we did a pretty good job.
How come at that time you did not feel like you were in the wrong place and you should head back on the first flight, and you had more of like, this is an opportunity mentality?
Because that's sort of what I've always believed, is that everything happens for a reason, and the decisions that you make, guide your future. And I'm not the kind of person that gives up on things very easy. I believe that like the harder things are, probably the more valuable they are to you, to overcome adversity, to face trials and tribulations that are unusual. And I like pushing myself to do new things. I never thought I would live in New York. You know, I was living in New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey, and my dad's a farmer. I was raised in a small town. I remember people used to drive tractors to school, like really. Everybody listened to country western music, and so. But I was always a little bit different than even my brothers, and my grandfather was an artist, so I studied with him, and I just always had this passion to do something different. And wherever that took me, I was cool with it. And who knows where I'll end up in the future. I'm cool with that too.
You came to work on a festival. How was that? And how did that experience make you stay after it?
Well, so I did. I came out for the first Doha Tribeca Film Festival. And at the time, I had worked on many festivals in the US, and it was something I really liked. I liked that those like short-term projects where you work nonstop around the clock for a few months, and then you'd have a break, and then you'd go back at it. And I liked the challenge of it. I liked the idea that was posed to me about, what the concept for the festival was, being very community based. And technically, I did leave. So my contract ended in, I want to say, November, and I left and I went back to New York, and I didn't think that I would be coming back to Doha. I wanted to, because I met the woman that I wanted to make my wife, and she was here. So, it was very much like a goal of mine, but I didn't see a way to do that until I received a phone call that they were going to start the Film Institute, and that they wanted to really have these education initiatives. And I was asked to come out as a mentor slash, I think the actual job title was educator, which I thought was very funny because I didn't know anything anyway. And I thought, okay, number one, this is a way to get back to Qatar. And number two, this is something I really believe in. This is something I think that would be very valuable to share whatever knowledge I had and whatever information I had with people that would really be passionate about it and would want to pursue this in the future. So I was happy to do that.
And how was that experience teaching film to people from the local community here who are very new to the film industry?
It was really interesting because it was baby steps. It was starting from the very beginning of, what is a story? Like, what is a film? How does a film work? What is the 3-act structure? All the very basic things that you kind of take for granted when you know films, and when you work in film and when you watch films, you don't think about this as something that no one knows, or that's something that someone doesn't know. It was very rewarding on one hand, because we got to share this information and we got to watch people do something new, and that was very cool for me. But it was also quite frustrating at times because of the fact that at that time in 2010, filmmaking was not looked at as a profession that locals should pursue. It was a hobby. And there was a lot of, whether it was pressure from families or societal pressure or professional expectations, is that these young people should be taking jobs in banks or in ministries or, things that people considered real jobs. So we would work with these filmmakers and we would spend so much time with them, and then some of them weren't allowed to come back and do it again. Like they they gave it a go and they had fun, and maybe their parents didn't want them to, or maybe they lost their interest in it. So that part of it was frustrating, because we would see people that I felt like, wow, this person is going to be an amazing filmmaker one day. And then we would never see them again. But then there were others who kept coming back and kept coming back. And those are the people that are making films now. So this is like, I've seen it come full circle, and that is so rewarding for me, because I'm able to now produce films for people who were 16 years old when I met them in their first workshop, and now they are legitimate filmmakers doing incredible stuff.
What were the tools that you would say you used to kind of unlock the potential the local community, the local filmmakers here had, especially that, again, I would assume that they're less exposed to film than, let's say, younger filmmakers that you would meet back in the US?
One thing that we always tried to do is we tried to watch films together, whether it was short films or music videos or feature films. We would have nights where we would invite these filmmakers to watch films with us, and we would each pick a film. So I would show one of my favorite films, whether it was a Jean-Luc Godard film or a Harmony Korine film or something very strange and unusual that there's no way they would have seen otherwise. And then we would talk about it. And I feel like that's a really important thing to do. Watching films can inform you on what's possible, and really anything is possible. And I think that's something that people need to understand, is that they don't have to replicate what they see on the screen. So if you watch Marvel films, you don't have to make a superhero film. If you like action films, you don't have to do, the same thing that they did in Die Hard or Terminator. I think that the other really important thing that we tried to do was listen to them. Listen to their stories, listen to the way that they spoke, ask them tough questions about themselves, see if they could tap into something that was much deeper than just surface level. And I think just being honest with people is probably the best tool you can have, because, I can see through people when they're not being honest with me, and I feel like everyone else can do the same. So I was always trying to be very honest and open and understanding. I think the psychology of film is very important, and I think that extends to the filmmaker as well. And I feel like people have said this on this podcast before, but like, telling your own story is so important, rather than letting someone else tell it for you. And that was something we stressed. We always wanted to make sure that they knew their story was more important than telling a story we've already seen. So, and it took a while to get there, because that's a scary thing, it's a very scary thing, being honest with someone and then being honest and letting other people watch it. And then you have to sit in a cinema with them, and it's so nerve-wracking. Like, I don't think you ever get over that, though. I think you're always slightly on edge. But yeah, honesty and openness and good listening, I think those are the most important tools.
I think building on this point about telling your own stories and like sort of linking it to what you said just a bit before, on how the local community here saw filmmaking as a hobby and not something that's like a real job. And I think maybe part of it is that it's not something authentic to the community. It's just, oh, these Westerners are coming here and then showing us cinemas and telling us just like, and they think it's not a sustainable job for their kids. So that's what I would say is their justification. But what is your perspective on the other side? What is your thoughts on film, whether it is being imported to the country or whether it's something authentic that the community can use to tell their own stories?
I feel like you're doing psychology with me, man. Well, okay. First of all, I think that authentic storytelling from here by people from here is the most important thing. But I also do see the importance of importing films for people to experience as well. Because I think film is a shared experience. It's a filmmaker putting something on the screen for other people to watch and then engage in some kind of dialogue about. There's nothing sadder than a film that doesn't make you think or doesn't make you talk. Those are the films that are very forgettable. And I think, I was thinking about this on the drive over here, about how every single act of expression is important, whether it's a poem, a song, a painting, a film. Everything is important because of the fact that your intention when you do it, if your intention is to do something pure and honest and something that you feel, then that's very, very important. It doesn't mean that it's beautiful. It doesn't mean that everyone should love it. But pouring that out of yourself is everything. But I also think we need to find common ground. We need to find that dialogue that lets us open up to one another, whether it's people from the West or people from the Middle East, or combining those two. I think understanding each other is what's going to bring more love to the world, because I feel like we lose track of that very quickly, and we get into really difficult situations all around the world because we forget that we're all human and we're all in this shared experience where you have fears, I have fears, I cry, you cry, I get happy, you get happy, and if we can find those things together, that's amazing. So whether it's a local film or an international film or whatever it is, I feel like it's all part of us going through this human experience, which is wild and insane, and just we're so lucky. We're so lucky to be here. I don't know if that answers your question, actually.
Kind of, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I kind of went
In a
around.
philosophized way, it does answer it.
Yeah, but no, I think all films are important. But I think here, the more we can tell local stories by local voices, it's the most important thing. It's the most important job we have when we're here.
So moving, I don't know if we're moving forward or moving backward at that point, but moving to 2012,
Okay.
founding of the Filmhouse. Tell us about it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this was an incredible opportunity. I was at Doha Film Institute, and I was approached by a good friend who had an advertising agency, and he said that they were exporting all of their work to Dubai and to Lebanon, and because there were very limited options for them in Qatar to produce commercials and things. And his idea was to create a production house that would sort of go hand in hand with this agency and keep work here. So I wanted to help him. So the first thing I did was I enlisted the help of someone I was starting to get very close with, a guy named Omar Khalifa, who was working at Al Jazeera. He worked on a bunch of programs, and I had seen that he was doing sort of independent films, and I really liked his style. So we were talking about having a film collective, and because we worked, we had jobs, we were normal people who worked normal jobs, and we wanted to make stuff again. So a group of us were getting together, and we were trying to figure out ways to make our own short films and get projects off the ground. And when I was approached about this, I said, I'm going to speak to Omar. And I said, look, we have this opportunity. Let's go for it. We made this presentation. We went through, all the equipment you'd need, all the setup, all the people, all the crew, everything you would need to get a really high-end production house put together. And then we went and presented it to a room full of Qatari men who I didn't know. Omar didn't know. And it was very intimidating, honestly. It was like we showed up with our presentation and an easel and put like a screen with our little projector, and we were going through things. And it felt like, in a way, it felt like we were on trial. You know, it was very weird. Like, it was a big conference room table, and everyone was in thobes, and it was very intimidating. And it was me standing there. What am I doing? I don't know anything about business. And we did the presentation, and we left, and we kind of laughed about it. And then the next day, or maybe it wasn't the next day, maybe a couple of days later, my friend called me, and he said, "You got the green light." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "It's happening. We're going to do it. The investment that is needed, that you outlined in your presentation, it's there." We're like, "What?" Like, that's crazy. I was like, "Oh, congratulations." And he's like, No. You're running it." And I was like, "I didn't sign up for that. Like, I have no idea how to run a business. I'm a filmmaker." And he's like, "That's fine. I'm going to help you. We're going to do it together." So I called Omar, and I said, "Omar, we have to quit our jobs." And his wife was pregnant, and we barely knew each other. And we were like, "Okay, let's do it." And we just went for it. And here we are. It's 12 years later, and it's still growing. And we've had just incredible experiences and incredible clients, and collaborated with such amazing filmmakers and artists and everyone that you can imagine. And, we're really blessed to be able to have this opportunity. And I think it goes back to what we were saying about, like, take the risks and don't give up, and see where your decisions take you. And this one took me places I never imagined.
At the start of that journey, what gaps in the film industry were you aiming at? Like, did you have a clear objective of what you wanted to do with the Filmhouse?
Yeah, the objective was very clear in the beginning. It was to do commercial projects for TVCs, cinema ads, things like that, at a very high level. So we had done the research and the legwork and watched a lot of the commercials that were being produced here, and we saw how we could sort of raise the bar on the level of production. And one of the ways was enlisting people from all around the world that we really admired their work. So we would go on Vimeo and look at staff picks, and we would go on Behance, and we would go on all these websites, and then we would just try and set up Skype calls with these people and convince them to give up their lives in London and New York and New Zealand and move to Qatar and work with us. And which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, we always talk about it and laugh about it because a lot of people thought it was a scam. And then we would get on Skype with them, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is real? Like, you're really doing this?" And then we would bring people here, and they would see it, and they would love it. And they all bought in the same way we did. And our objective was to make beautiful films for clients and show them that their money can go a lot further than what it was previously. And actually, the first project we did as the Filmhouse, I sold my car to make it, because we needed to prove to people what we were capable of without them taking a risk. So we had a friend who was a chef at a place called the Anvil Rooms, which was under the Qatar Luxury Group. And they had a place in Tornado Tower, and we loved it. It was like the best steakhouse. And we were like, let's make a film for them. And we made this really beautiful film for them, put it out. It won a bunch of awards. We went to Cannes with them. We did all these kind of like really cool things. And then our emails were lighting up, and people were like, "Yeah, we believe that you guys can do great stuff." And then the next thing you know, we're making the first film for Hamad International Airport. We're making, just an insane amount of projects, and it just kept growing and growing and growing.
At that time, why did you think it was significant, or like, I don't want to say relevant, but what was, yeah, the relevance of commercials to the growth of the industry? Why not something else? Why not short films, independent cinema, other options? Why did you choose commercials specifically? Why did you think they were important?
Well, commercials chose us, really. I mean, that was the way to start the company, because that was the need. And I think regardless of like what the format is, or the the intention, I think if you're making visuals, you just make them as beautiful as you can. And ultimately, our goal has always been, to make feature films and series and these kind of things. But this was the direct need of the market at the time. That market's kind of shifted over the years, especially with the invention of social media and the way that people sort of digest content. And we've just kind of rolled with that. But yeah, I don't think anyone really ever aspires to be a commercial filmmaker. Like, I don't know anyone in film school who's like, you know what, I really want to make a Nescafe ad. That will be the pinnacle of my world. But I think applying yourself to do it the best way possible is still very fulfilling.
And what do you look at, or what do you focus on when you try to have a really good high production? Is it the equipment, or like the team behind the camera? Is it like the story that you're trying to tell? Is there something specific that you chose and like decided to excel in, like you bought the best camera and that made it for you?
Well, we for sure. I mean, that was part of our plan, was to buy the most state of the art equipment that you could have. But I don't think that's what makes a project. Like, I think you could shoot a beautiful film on your iPhone, even if it was like iPhone 1, if the story's good. And I think the Filmhouse really is a combination of all of those things that you just listed: the crew, the story, the equipment, all of that. You put it into, it's like a recipe, like you're making food, and you put all those things into the pot, it's gonna taste good when it comes out. So, but in the end, the most important thing is the story and the people that make it. I think you could shoot it with anything and it would be just as good. But at that time, though, it was, we were on the cusp of like very, very cool things with cameras. Like the Reds were out, the first Alexa came out, so we bought those and we were like, let's do it. I mean, I learned on film, and I learned even in high school on shooting on VHS. And I feel like some of my best work was then, and it's not because of the visual, like the quality of the footage. It's the intention of the footage, the story behind it. But yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about the people that work at the Filmhouse. Like, these people are my family, and I love them, and I would do anything for them. And I feel they feel the same way about me. And I think that ecosystem is what has allowed us to excel for so many years, and so many of us stay together, and they're just great people.
Now, moving more towards the business side of things, what it's like to manage a company. How does that take you away from the creative side? How do you ensure that all the work that happens in your company is something you're proud of?
Yeah, I mean, this is difficult. It's very difficult because, like I said, I had no intention of being a business person. And I still, even though I am a business person, I don't see myself through that lens. I still see myself very much as a filmmaker and, a goofy person who just likes to have fun. And but it can be stressful, especially when you're in commercials. Like, you are responsible for large sums of money from corporations who are expecting something of you, and oftentimes change the goalposts as you go, which is totally different than filmmaking. Like, filmmaking, you have your script and you are in charge and you can do whatever you want. If you see something that you want to change, you can change it on the spot. But when you're doing things for clients, it's their image, it's their end product. And you could have a script that's been signed off and you're in production and go into post-production, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, this isn't what we want. We want to do something different. Like, what? This is terrifying. But finding that balance is very important. It's like the responsibility mixed with creativity can be stressful, but it's also, it's like that Spider-Man thing, like with what is it? Great power comes great responsibility, something like that. Like, it feels like that. And it does, sometimes it does take you out of the creative mindset of a filmmaker. But you're on this really crazy ride with other people that you really admire and you respect, and you're doing it together. So ultimately, it's an experience that you'll cherish. It doesn't matter what the product is or who you're working for, or how you're getting shouted at. It's just, afterwards, that you're going to be sitting across the table from someone you care about and you're going to laugh about it. So yeah, I mean, it's a very, I don't know that I would wish it on anyone. I feel like it takes a very patient person to do that. And over the years, I've learned patience. And I think Qatar is the perfect place for that, to teach you patience, because the way of life is a lot slower, from New York. New York, it's constant rat race. And it's, if you miss out on one thing, you're never going to get another job. And in Qatar, it's like, we have this flow, this like, time is kind of flexible, and you learn to like, okay, you know what? That person doesn't mean to waste my time. That person, just because they're late, doesn't mean that I shouldn't deal with them. And just, you sort of adapt to the way things work here, and you make it a part of yourself. So now I find myself to be very patient and very understanding, and I just want people to be happy, and at the end of the day, I want to be happy. So I treat people the way I want to be treated, and then see what happens.
Do you think throughout the years, maybe more than a decade now, of the Filmhouse, as an institution, do you feel like you have a distinct identity, maybe like some unique values, like you build that kind of aura around an institution?
It's hard for me to say that, because I feel like that would be, because I'm a part of it, it's hard to see it from the outside. But when I am able to step outside and look at what we've created over these years, I definitely think that we have a very distinct personality and way of doing things, and expectations of one another. And I like to think that we're pretty cool. Like, we do cool projects, and we have an open door policy too. Like, anytime a filmmaker wants to come see the Filmhouse, chat with someone, whether it's high school students, university students who are like desperate just to do an internship, or someone who has a script who just isn't able to access people to talk to about it, we're always there. And I've met so many incredible people over these years because of that. And I feel like when the time comes for myself to leave Qatar, if that ever happens, I would like to leave knowing that I've made a mark that will last for a very long time, and that we did something to elevate the film industry past what it was.
Do you think that you owe it back to the community as a person or the Filmhouse as an institution? Why is it important to give back?
Oh, I think both. I think me, personally, I owe it to the community because what the community has given me and the experiences I've had because of Qatar and the people I've met and the doors that have opened up to me. I want to be that same positive influence that I've received. And as the Filmhouse, I think if, as important as our work is in the commercial world, it's much easier to forget than films. And so one of the things that was very important to me from the very beginning was our commercials can't be the end of things. We do these things, obviously we're a company that needs to make profit and be successful in a business sense. But for me to be that person, I needed to know that we could then take some of that money and some of those resources that we have and give them back and make people's films and like really support local filmmakers. And thank God we have, shareholders and a chairman and a board that are incredible people, and they share that same vision, and they love to see the stuff that we're doing, and they love when we support filmmakers. And I will be forever grateful for that. The people that believed in me and in the Filmhouse also believe in this vision of supporting film and filmmakers.
And do you have any plans for what the Filmhouse could do beyond commercials?
So one of the big things that we're doing now is we're developing something called TFH Originals. And what this is it's a separate, it's within the same company, but it's a separate entity that focuses solely on producing feature films, series, short films, and content from not only ourselves, but other filmmakers. So we're actively pursuing scripts and filmmakers who maybe don't have a script currently, but that we really admire. So right now we have 2 features that we're working on. We have a series, we have animations, we have short films. And this is something I'm very excited about because I think that this is the way we always wanted it to go. And it's taken 12 years. I mean, granted, we've produced probably, I don't know, 15, 20 short films over the years, but now we're doing it very seriously with full-time people dedicated to just that. And yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Moving from this long journey back to your own personal projects, having done all of that and having been responsible for so many projects and deadlines and managing people, basically managing a whole company, do you still find time to go back to yourself as a filmmaker and work on your personal things?
I hadn't for a long time. I made a feature documentary that I shot from between 2010 and 2013. And I was going back and forth to Egypt to make this documentary that I was very, very passionate about. It was called Zebalin, which is about it was about a family of garbage collectors. And it was something that I loved very much, and it was a passion project. And I made that, and that was very fulfilling for me. But then I think between managing the business and doing commercials and all this, I got very distracted. And it's not that I was not doing anything, but it was that I was always prioritizing either, our client's work or the work of someone else. And I really wanted to support these people. And I found these scripts that were great, and I found these filmmakers that really inspired me, and I helped them make their work. Along the way, I made a music video, I made a couple of things, a couple animations, and things that didn't require a huge amount of time, like on set. But then only very recently did I sort of say, I think it's time. I think it's time for me to get back in the saddle and see if I can still do this. I don't think you ever lose it, but I think that you become a different person over the years. Like, so I had a script that I had written, and I was very excited to try and do this, but I had never found the right actor for it. And then one day I saw this guy, and I was like, this guy could be that character, and I think I could do this. I think I could make this film. And I got this team together that were just incredible. Like, just all the people that I've worked with all these years, and people that I've done favors for, who then were like, I want to help you. You've helped me. I want to help you now. And it became this like very, very cool team who all really wanted to make this film. And that passion, that like, it just filled me with so much joy. And making that film, it's called Fahad the Furious, which was like shameless self-promotion. It was such a great experience, and it reminded me of why I started making films in the first place, because it is the best feeling, like playing make-believe on a large scale with 100 of your closest friends. You know, it's so cool. So now I'm back in it.
I think maybe one question to end on, and I think this would be particularly relevant to either people who are wanting to get into the film industry, or who have spent some time in it and are not sure whether it's a lifetime thing or no. I would say for you it has been a lifetime thing. So having spent so many years in the film industry, how do you keep being inspired and having new projects to do, new ideas to pursue, and just not like get bored with everything and wanting to leave it all?
I think I'm also very stubborn. I think being stubborn is a good thing. I think surrounding yourself with people that inspire you is like the most valuable thing you can do as a person, regardless of film or not. I think, you know, we're a bit like sponges, you know, whether it's the content that we take in, it becomes part of us. The people that we hang out with, their personality becomes part of our personality. And you can lose yourself very easily in that. But if you surround yourself with really great people, and you intake great art, and you have great experiences, and you know, I have 2 children, I have 2 young daughters, and they inspire me. And like my daughter, she draws a picture, and I look at it, and I'm like, wow, I want to draw a picture. Or she wants to make films. She came home from school one day, and she told me, Daddy, did you know I'm really popular at school? And I was like, okay, you're 5. And I was like, is it because you're really kind and you're really nice to people? And she said, no, it's because everybody knows I'm a filmmaker. And I was like, this is the coolest thing. And that also inspired me. And we make these little movies together. And I have this group of people around me that I just love so much. And I find it impossible to get jaded at this stage of my life. Like, I'm 41 years old. If I haven't been jaded yet, I don't think I'm going to get there. And I just want to keep going. I want to keep helping others make their films. I want to make my films. I want to watch films. I want to just be a part of this world. Because again, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, like, we live in a crazy world where there's so much anger and hostility and hate, and just, you turn on the news and it's just negative all the time. But you can flip the script on that, and you can create your own world and your own bubble, and like live with that, and then sort of bring people into that bubble and make it bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually we're all living in a place that's much better. And I hope that that's the future. So don't get tired of things. Keep trying. If you hit a brick wall with something you're doing, find a way around it, climb over it, bust through it, just keep going and you'll find a way. You always do.
That's such a high note to end on. Thank you so much, Justin. This was great.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.